everybody, it's Dana. Welcome back. Today we're going to be playing with the Concord and 9th Magnolia Wreath set. I absolutely love this beautiful wreath set. As soon as I saw it, I know exactly what I wanted to do with it. And I'm going to be stamping it a little bit differently today. So bear with me and learn a really cool technique. So I've played a lot with this stamp. So it's a little bit stained, but trust me, if your stamps get stained, they're going to work just perfectly. So today, instead of using ink, I'm going to be using Brusho, which is a pigment powder, watercolor powder, and a spray bottle. So to get started, I'm going to zoom in and really show you this process up close. So I'm going to tap on this pigment powder. So like I said, it's pigment powder, it's watercolor particles, and it has a whole bunch of different colors in one little bottle. So as you can see, I'm getting all those pretty little particles all over my stamp. So this is what's going to be my ink for today. So I have that everywhere on my stamp, and now I'm going to lightly spritz it. So you see that yellow color actually turned to a gorgeous green color. Now within this green is shades of blue and darker green. So I'm using a very fine paintbrush here, and I'm lightly spreading all of the color out to every single one of the petals. So I don't have to be perfect with this. I'm just moving the color around just so I know that each one of my petals actually has a little bit of color on it. And this is a super fun and easy technique to do with this Brusho and this beautiful magnolia wreath. So now, since I have most of the color saturated on the stamp, I'm going to go in with a Q-tip. And I'm just going to hollow out the middle of the stamp and then soak up any of that extra water that might be puddling around the edges of the stamp. And that just helps me not to bring a lot of that water over to my paper. And I'm just going to also use a paper towel, again, just to not bring over a lot of that water to my paper so I don't have a lot of drip marks. So now, so that's clean up, I'm going to just very lightly from high up above do 2 more spritz and then clean up rather in the middle one more time with my Q-tip and then bring my lid over. So you can see the colors really moving around just where the stamp is. And I'm just going to lightly take my fingers and walk it around. And this is really going to fill in and give me a beautiful watercolored wreath. And it looks so pretty when it's done. Like I said, I've done this several times and it's actually beautiful. So I'm just going to gently press that down. And then when I see it's taken to my paper, I'm going to lightly lift my lid. And look at that beautiful color I have there. Now I'm going to take my paintbrush in the areas that it's not totally filled in. I'm just going to grab some of that Brusho right off of the stamp and go ahead and fill in some of those areas. Now I'm going to leave some of the areas white so they look kind of like a highlight. Isn't this gorgeous? I absolutely love this technique. So I'm going to pick that up and bring it up close so you can see all the beautiful colors in that. I'm going to go ahead and put that back down, and I'm going to grab my heat gun and I'm going to go ahead and dry that because I want this to be dried for my next step. Now for the next step, in this stamp set, you're going to also have a layering image. So I'm just going to grab that layering image, place it right on top of the stamp that's already there, and bring it over. This is a little cheat trick for me. And this way I know that everything lines up. Now I'm just going to make sure that that layering stamp is lined up and I can remove that stamp out of the way. And I can go ahead and clean off the lid to my MISTI. And now for this layer here, I want to emboss this layer. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my anti-static bag and make sure, because at this point I don't want any of the extra embossing powder to get all over this. So right here I'm going to use my Versamark ink, and that is a clear ink. And this is going to give me a really pretty gold emboss top layer. Now there's other ways that you can just use a regular ink pad with this, and you can go over to the Concord and 9th blog and you can really see some of the great ways that this stamp set was originally used. But as soon as I saw it, I knew I wanted to turn it into a watercolor background. So now since I went ahead and did the stamping, I'm going to grab myself some gold embossing powder. This is the Judikin gold embossing powder, which happens to be my favorite right now. I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle some of that on there. And then I'm going to pour that back into the container just so I don't waste any of it, because like I said, it's my favorite embossing powder. And then I'm going to heat up my heat gun and get it pretty hot before I actually bring it to my paper. So this will help me to keep my paper from warping too much. So I'm going to start from the front, and then I'm going to flip it over and go to the back, and then bring it back to the front. And you're going to really see how beautiful this embossing powder is. So this top layer really gives this some really great dimension. But I love the beautiful watercolor wash behind this piece. Look how gorgeous this is. Isn't that beautiful? All right, now since that's done, I'm going to just go ahead and use some Wonky dies and run this through my die cut machine. Now since this panel is done, I want to go ahead and use the To You and Yours sentiment. And I want to also put this in gold. So I'm just going to grab a scrap of watercolor paper. Oh, and the watercolor paper I'm using today happens to be Canson watercolor paper. So I'm going to go ahead and do this in gold as well. So I'm going to grab my anti-static tool again. Sorry about that. And my Versamark. And this is the only sentiment. I really want this to be a very clean and simple card. So I'm not going to have a lot of fuss going on with this card. I'm going to also use, like I said, this same gold embossing powder. And I'm going to sprinkle that right onto that strip. And then tap off any extra. And I really love that this banner piece is a solid piece. And it's just not like the words. It actually has a nice little oomph to this sentiment piece. I'm going to go ahead and grab my heat gun and make sure it's really, really hot so I can melt this all at one time. And look how gorgeous that is. I love having this like labeled look as a banner. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use some scissors just to cut this down. And this is something really easy to cut out just with a pair of scissors. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a white border around it. All right, now since that's almost done, I'm just going to come back in right around the corner and just clean that up. Now, like I said, this is going to be a really simple and clean card. So I'm just going to figure out where I want to go ahead and put my sentiment. I'm going to grab some pop-up dots. And since this is a little bit of a thinner banner, I'm just going to cut my foam dots or my foam squares in half. And then I think I'm going to place that maybe across the middle of my wreath. I think that's a look very, very nice right across the middle. So yeah, I think I like it across the middle instead of at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and line that down, and that gives me a little bit of definition in my card instead of it just being flat across that. I'm going to put that down, and then just to finish off my card, I added just a few sequins and laid it onto a white card base. So here is what my card was done, totally complete. Thank you guys for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys in another video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.